Call this meeting to order. Time is approximately 9:30 in the morning. If you do have any electronic devices that make noise, please shut them off and put them on silent. It would be greatly appreciated to limit the interruptions. In our opening, we'd like to have the invocation led by Pastor John Lynch of East Coast Believers, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Lockhart. Can we all stand, please? Pastor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. If we can just bow our heads and close our eyes. Father, we come before you this day to pray for our county government. We pray that these leaders and their families would be strengthened by you, and that they would be given wisdom and strategy to make the best decisions for the people, families, schools, and businesses in Seminole County. I pray for unity among them, supporting each other through good and bad, supporting each other when they may not agree, and standing together when people try to divide them. Grant them all a special blessing this morning to withstand and overcome any challenge that might come their way. At a time where people are divided, give them the boldness to stand up for what is right, making the best decisions they can for this county. At a time where people want to tear down, give them the strength to look to you to help them build up. We believe this morning that nothing is impossible for those who believe, and I pray that great things will come from this group of people, that they would be remembered not for their mistakes, but for their wisdom, their resolve, their boldness, and hard work for what they're about to do. Bless them this day, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Lynch. Thank you, Commissioner Lockhart. For the record, we're going to have Commissioner Zimbauer joining us via Zoom. Welcome, Commissioner Zimbauer. Before we go on to proclamation, awards, and presentations, I do want to take a little bit of a privilege here, if the board wouldn't mind. So many times we have so many great staff people here, to single one out or a group of them out is almost impossible because there's so many of them. But there is one individual that's been at every commission meeting since February of 2000. And he is retiring at the end of this month. And he would, I'm sure he would be wanting to be here, standing in front of us, but he's always behind the glass window running the meetings on SGTV. And that is Paul Lewis. Paul Lewis has been with us since February of 2000. He's not missed one county commission meeting. In fact, I spoke to him just before. He suggests I coordinated my vacation so I wouldn't miss a meeting. True dedication. And he will be sadly missed. I will also tell you that I love his sense of humor. He always has that one-liner that, like, did he really say that?
Mm-hmm. He did.
And he really did.
He did.
As we all know. So, Paul, you'll be missed. I know you can't wave, but I'm waving at you. God bless you and thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. First proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Hur. Commissioner?
Thank you. It is my absolute honor to move the following proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Marine Corps Private Robert Conti, Jr. for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us there are few things more American than giving ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, by their service they kept America strong. And whereas Private Robert Conti Jr. joined the U.S. Marine Corps in 1970 and served at Parris Island, South Carolina, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, California, Camp Pendleton, California, and Okinawa, Japan. And whereas Private Robert Conti Jr. served with Battery K, 4th Battalion, 12th Marines, 3rd Marines Division, as a field radio operator and a radio telephone operator. His duties included training to fight with members of combat units. Under the stress of combat training, he controlled multi-million-dollar radio systems to enable wartime communications. His actions led to the award of the National Defense Medal and the Good Conduct Medal. And whereas Private Robert Conti Jr. transitioned to a civilian career in the field of firefighting with the New York Fire Department from May of 1987 until his retirement in April of 2005. On September 11th, 2001, he heroically responded to the tragic terrorist attacks, focusing on rescue operations, evacuations, and providing life-saving tactics for the injured. Following his retirement, he moved with his wife Angie, to Seminole County, where they have lived for the past 13 years. And whereas Private Robert Conti Jr. has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Marine Corps, and Seminole County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Private Robert Conti Jr. for his outstanding service to the United States Marine Corps and residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Private Robert Conti Jr. along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month, adopted the 22nd day of February 2022.
Second.
A motion, second discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Would you like to present it?
Would you like to come down?
The second photo is Commissioner de Velasco family. The rows is between the two photos.
We have equal time, we can balance it out.
Stay right there. Put the family photo.
Get someone on this side.
I just want to say thank you very much.
Just give us 1 minute. I want to give you
Gonna all be
Robert.
in our places with bright, shiny faces for you.
All right. Just want to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I'm deeply humbled. I joined the Marine Corps back then because of a wayward kid, and I needed some discipline. And the military gave me that discipline and that fortitude so I could become the man that I am today. I left the Marine Corps, joined the fire department. I did what I had to do, and I had to do it all over again. I would take the same route. And I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. My family thanks you. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda we have is our investment, from our investment advisor. Can we get Scott on the phone?
It's right here.
In person.
Is it real or is it Memorex?
Morning, Scott.
Good morning. All right, mic is sensitive today. That's
Can you just
good.
introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm Scott McIntyre. I'm a Managing Director and Senior Portfolio Manager for Hilltop Securities Asset Management.
Thank you, Scott.
And I apologize for being a few minutes late today. I have to admit I was glued to the news and not to my watch. There's a lot going on today, obviously. It seems like we're kind of going from one crisis to the other. Am I doing this right? Where should I point? Okay. So the good news is that the virus seems to be fading away, at least for the time being, at least this particular variant, and that's normally a real big positive, and all else equal, that is a positive for the economy. The labor market is now considered healthy, not so much because there was a really good report, but because the Labor Department smoothed out the last year, and suddenly instead of having job growth slow at the end of the year, we have some momentum coming into the new year, so sort of take that with a grain of salt. But the Fed is essentially thrown in the towel. They believe that the labor market is okay. Now they're hyper-focused on inflation, and inflation worries are mounting, so inflation expectations are also rising. Because we expected that inflation would at least moderate, and inflation continues to rise. And that's worrying people. When people get worried, they react, and the market has reacted to that. So market yields have spiked since the last time we were here. In fact, quite a bit. I think in my career, percentage-wise, since the beginning of October, this is probably the most violence, a rough word, but probably the most abrupt shift on the short end of the market, percentage-wise, that I've seen. Okay, there we go. So very briefly, economic growth, and you wouldn't guess it, but last year in 2021, 5.7% growth for the entire year was the strongest year of economic growth we've had since 1984. That's sort of the piece of the puzzle that kind of gets left off. That suggests that demand is there, but we all know that supply is lacking. And I'll just throw this into the mix. Politics aside, what's going on in Ottawa with this truckers' strike is, in terms of how that affects supply, could be pretty significant, not just because of that, but because that has a tendency to spread. So if we have a trucker stoppage in the United States, whereas it appears as though the bottlenecks have been easing quite a bit, that would sort of, assuming it got bigger and bigger and bigger, could potentially put that to an end. I will mention, too, that as a side note, GM said that they expect 30% more production this year over last year because they feel like the microchips that they had not been getting, they're getting a lot quicker than they had. So there are a lot of pluses for every minus, but it seems like we're going from one crisis to another these days without really being able to catch our breath. And what I hadn't mentioned is that, this is what I was focused on today, is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or whatever you want to call it. I think that is a real wild card in terms of what happens ultimately with that. If anything else, it probably hurts the equity markets once they think about it, because that suggests that you shouldn't take risks in high multiple stocks. And once the high multiple stocks sell off, this market as a whole does. And if our wealth effect, if we feel like we're not where we were a couple months ago, even if it's in your 401k, you're going to have a tendency to spend less on your home or your car, things like that. Anyway, as I mentioned before, and I wish I had another slide up here to show you, but as you can see, if you look at those blue bar lines, the Bureau of Labor Statistics did smooth out the non-farm payroll growth. I don't really know what to think of that, except that things look healthier. There are still 1.6, 1.7 jobs per person looking for work right now, and that is opposed to the last Great Recession, where there was one person and, 6 people in one job. So and it certainly looks okay in labor land here. But inflation is the real story, and inflation will continue to be a real story. And what I want to mention, besides the fact that we're 7.5% headline consumer price inflation as of the month of January, the expectation is that February is going to be hotter, but on a year-over-year basis, by the time we get to the end of the year, economists on a whole are looking for that 7.5 to be closer to 3.5. A lot of that is the year-over-year base effect, but part of it is that unless the truck stoppage gets more severe, it sure appears as though supply is coming back. And a lot of that will be that factory workers who may have been sick are able to work longer shifts because the virus seems to be behind us for now. So I want to show you this. This isn't something I typically show, but I want to show 10 weeks ago versus now. This is the implied Fed funds rate. The Fed funds rate is the overnight rate. The overnight rate is currently 0. 25 basis point hike is the chances of it anyway, or what's in that red box. So if you look really closely, the expectation in October, early October, was by the time we got to the Fed meeting on March 16th, which is the top of that, there was a 0% chance the market was indicating that there would be a rate hike of any kind. And also in October, if you go out a full year, the expectation was not even one rate hike baked into the market. Flash forward to earlier this week, or actually at one point last week, you can see that through the March meeting, boy, I wish my eyes were a little bit better, through the March meeting, there is now over a 1.5% chance of a 25 basis point hike, so there is a possibility of a 50 basis point hike on March 16th. And if you go out all the way 1 year, you can see there are now 7 quarter-point rate hikes that are built into the market. And I would blame that almost entirely on inflation expectations, because people want to get paid for the idea that their money isn't going to be worth quite as much, and they expect the Fed is going to react to this. So Bloomberg yield forecast, I just want to toss this in. These are 2 different forecasts. The most recent one is at the bottom. You can see that these 70 economists now believe that very differently than they did in November. So it's the Fed, it's the economists, and it's the market, and everybody's on the same page. Looking at our current investment choices, and I've kind of had a habit now of going back and putting a line through where we were at the last meeting, but you can see that things have progressively stepped up over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. That's good in terms of what our investment choices are, but it puts us in a difficult position because the idea is, do we invest now or do we wait? The idea is ultimately going to be that you leave more powder dry than you might normally leave, and you come in and put a couple of feet into the market, and you do the best that you can with all the unknown variables that we have in play. Just one thing I want to point out, too, is that those right there at the top right-hand corner, that's the banks. The banks kept you guys afloat for a long, long time, paying above market rates. The clerk's office has contacted the banks and asked them if when the Fed steps up, they will be willing to step up in lockstep with their rate. The idea, generally speaking, is probably not, maybe not. So I think we're probably going to wind up abandoning them, probably keeping some money there, but that won't be, the life preserver for the most part. And then the pool rates, are still very low. They'll move up with Fed action starting next month, but for right now, they're low. So, our choices are very low. We're stepping out on the curve and accepting some of the yield along with a little bit of the market risk. So I want to mention a couple things. Recent and upcoming maturities. This is a good thing, as you can see what's coming off in terms of doing the math, 30, 50, 61 million is coming off at very low rates. Those are going to be invested at much, much higher rates regardless of where we go on the curve. Looking at the recent maturities, those first couple that we had done last month were very short. The intention was that we would like to position those so that we could reinvest them when they mature at higher rates. So we put 30 million, actually 40 million out to basically 5 and 6 months out on the curve, and picked up a 41 and a 48. Went out a little bit longer. A lot of those purchases are designed to actually have money maturing in a ladder so that regardless of what happens, you're well funded. But what I'm recommending today is a little less than would normally be the case, a little more cautious. but we're looking at October, November, and February, so essentially, 8 months, 9 months, and then a little over 12 months. Can pick up an average of 1% there. That's because the market has already baked these in. We're a little reluctant to go out much further than that. And I'm going to skip to the next slide here real quick and come back. So portfolio stats. You're at about between 6 and 7 months on average, which is about where you want to be if we expect rates to go up. The average yield has stepped up from a 38 to a 43. Actually, it stepped up from a 38 to 43 as a result of these purchases last time. We're in about a 2/3 fixed, 1/3 floating rate. And then, and this is key, inside of 100 days, there's $367 million. So a little over half of your money is very, very short and has been positioned to be able to mature. So coming back up here. So what I need is a motion to implement the purchase recommendations. Those would be the $35 million that I have up there on the relatively short U.S. Treasury purchases, and to recommend that the clerk implement and move these forward.
Thank you, Scott. Before we do that, anyone in the public would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll go to the board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no discussion, I will move the approval of the recommendation of the investment advisor.
Second.
A motion is second. Before we call the question, Commissioner Zimbauer, do you have any questions?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the board? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
You too.
And I'd be remiss, Mr. Malloy, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Before we move on to the consent agenda, public participation pursuant to Florida law, the public has the right to be heard on all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners acting ministerially for emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statute. The public comment time on propositions is 3 minutes for individuals, 6 minutes for a group representative. The right to be heard on quasi-judicial hearings are governed by Florida law. The public will be provided an opportunity to be heard on non-agenda items at the end of the meeting. Proper decorum is always requested at these meetings. This time we'll go to the consent agenda. County Manager, do you have any comments?
No changes, sir, but I just do want to bring to your attention that there were a couple items that you did get supplemental information, and hopefully it was in at least timely enough manner for you to be able to review those for decision-making.
Okay. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if there is no questions, comments from the audience, I will move the approval of consent items 3 through 18 and 19, which is the clerk's agenda.
Second.
We have a second. Any written requests?
No, sir.
Any comments from the floor? Commissioner Zimba, you have any questions?
All good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, I would like to just mention, I didn't want to pull it out because I was not opposed to it. It's just that in item number 7, which is the plat, once again, it's in the Wekiva Protection Area. There's 2 lots. They're going to be put, because there is no sewer available, they're going to be put in septic tanks. The one thing that I am thankful for is that, as requirement by state statute, as soon as sanitary sewer is available in that area, they will have to hook up. And the point is that if we don't make sure that happens, that we're just costing our own taxpayers money eventually, that we're going to have to replace those things. So that's, I just want to make sure that that's part of the development order, because it's also state statute.
We're not here on the development order, we're just here on the plat, but I believe...
No, I understand, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that it was going to be, this septic
Got it.
tank.
Thank you for pointing that out. Any other comments before we move on? Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 20, which is the legislative update.
Good
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tricia Johnson, Deputy County Manager. Just a quick update for you today. We have about 3 weeks left in legislative session. So the House and Senate are about $3 million apart on their budget. They'll go into conference, I believe, next week to iron out that gap before it goes to the governor. Our appropriations requests are still strong. In fact, I want to thank John Drudge and Tony Nelson and their team. We had some paperwork we received Friday afternoon to have completed by midday yesterday related to our E.E. Williamson appropriations request and our Wekiva Springs Road intersection request. They were fairly significant documents we had to complete, so they helped me turn that around in a very timely manner, so thanks to them. We do feel positive about those requests. It's hard to say where they'll land, but because those two requests are both in the House and Senate budget, it does appear they'll be funded unless they're vetoed by the governor. As you know, discussions continue to focus on redistricting. The House advanced a map last Friday that is further aligned with the Senate map. The proposed map will need approval from the House Redistricting Committee, which meets this Thursday before it goes to the full House. Ultimately, of course, the map that they agree upon, the Senate and House agree upon, will then go to the governor. And I believe the main challenge associated with redistricting right now is related to a district up in North Florida, the Jacksonville area. So that is not necessarily related to Central Florida, but that's kind of the continued holdup with respect to redistricting. The bill that has been a concern related to an additional homestead exemption for critical public service workers is on special order for the House today, meaning the House will vote on it on the floor. This bill, it's a positive bill in that a list of critical public service workers will get an additional homestead exemption. The challenge, of course, is what does that mean for the county in terms of property taxes? I know our property appraiser, David Johnson, is monitoring this and running numbers to determine what kind of impact this may have on Seminole County. He doesn't believe it will be significant. That being said, I know that he is keeping his eyes open for it. He'll be at, I believe, our next board meeting, so it may be something that he addresses at that time. And other than monitoring our appropriations requests and ongoing matters, and certainly watching for anything related to development when it comes to local bills, certainly in this last 3 weeks of session, that's really my update for you. Redistricting and now the budget have really been the name of the game.
Thank you. Before we move on to board discussion, is there anyone in the public that would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll close that. And I would like to publicly thank both Commissioner Lockhart and Commissioner Constantine for going with you up to Tallahassee, if not one, but multiple times. And their work up there, I just wanted to publicly thank them both. Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. Just one thing I think that we want to monitor and maybe report at the next time, because it'll be far down the road, is the changes in the sovereign immunity. The trial lawyers have proposed a particular thing that will increase the sovereign immunity, which could have significant impact on our insurance. There's also a portion of it that would allow us to make the final determination, as opposed to the fact that we can come to an agreement, then it goes to Tallahassee and they start the process all over again. And I can tell you that I agree that the claims bill system is antiquated. It sometimes takes up to 6-7 years for people to get claims paid, even when the counties approve it. But and that the numbers, I do agree, and I think the Association of Counties agrees that it is too low, but we're trying to negotiate that it doesn't become too high. And so there is ongoing negotiations, and I know that Tricia's been part of that, but I just wanted to bring that point out too. That could have impact on our budget determinations.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Commissioner Zimbauer?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, I'd like to ask the county manager if he has any updates.
Nothing at this time.
The other thing I'd like to ask the county manager, I know that at the last meeting we talked about updating and only updating the board at the CMAT rest for the courthouse. I just want to make sure that that was taken care of.
Yes, I think we met with everyone except for Commissioner Zimbauer, and we moved his meeting because of some other issues that he had, but we will catch up with him. It's been rescheduled.
All right, thank you. Any discussions, questions from the board? Okay. Ask the county attorney for their briefing.
Nothing from the county attorney's office, Chairman.
Things are moving too quick.
Do you want to do our district report?
Excuse me?
Do you want to do our district report?
I don't have my district report with me.
Okay.
I'd like to do it in the afternoon if there's no objection. So I think this afternoon will go quickly as well. Commissioner Constantine?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, from the county attorney, I believe that I received information, and I think that the county attorney's office received also, about something that we rejected last meeting about the petition, about not putting it on the ballot for the Fern Park Highlight potential casino, whatever you want to call it. I heard, and I just want to verify, that the county attorney's office is working with them on, they've decided to go and do a petition drive.
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
Commissioner, I personally am not aware of that. That may be taking place. I can get with Bryant, and we'll make sure that...
I believe that the attorney, Attorney Applegate, is aware of that, but I just wanted to make sure. The one thing that concerns me is that we have input and work with them on the language of the petition, because, people could say anything on a petition. And so we want to make sure that the language in the petition is very clear and straightforward, and the people that are signing those petitions, if they do go forward with it, are aware exactly of what it's doing.
Sure thing.
Any other comments for the county attorney? Commissioner Herr?
Yes, I think in the last meeting, Commissioner Lockhart asked that Bob Slavin share the county manager posting with all of us. I think that's been done. I know Bryant has been out, but there has been significant amount of feedback from my office shared, and I want to give a shout out to Tricia and Melanie and the crew for jumping in and helping to make sure that that's posted appropriately representing the county. So that's in play. I have not spoken to Brian about it.
Yes, yes, that is the case.
Can we ask this, if the board is okay with it? Can you just give us an update at the end of the meeting in the afternoon?
That's no problem, Chairman.
I think that'd be appropriate. That way, everyone's up to speed. Any other questions? Commissioner Zimbauer?
No, Commissioner Herr covered the question I had. Thank you.
Okay. Paul, once again, thank you for all your hard work. It's quite obvious that the man behind the screen is definitely doing his job. So with that, we're going to recess, and we'll be back here in the afternoon session at 1:30.